Hello. First and foremost, please forgive the one, ambient noise around me, and two, the state of disarray behind me, poor lighting, and things of that sort. I'm still moving in and still figuring out where things go, and currently that means that I'm surrounded by windows, which means I'm surrounded by noise. Um, so, really quickly, today's review is going to be of Pina, spine. I don't know what spine number. It's a recent release, released this year. Um, it's about German choreographer, dancer Pina Bausch. It's by Wim Winders, who's pretty pretty well respected filmmaker. Pina Bausch is arguably the most renowned modern choreographer and dancer of sort of the contemporary dance movement, 20th century, late 20th century. I don't really know how to talk about this movie. There's four dances, segments from four dances by Pina Bausch. The first is a adaptation of Igor Stravinsky's The Rites of Spring. The second is her notorious Café Muller. Oh god, they're all German. What's the third one? Third one is Kontaktov, and the fourth is Vollmond, which, forgive my poor German. And then there's a couple of sort of solo dances at the end as well. But Café Muller is where most of the movie's spent, so it's sort of in the middle. But all these segments of dances are broken up by sort of interviews with dancers from the company that Pina was responsible for. The first one, The Rites of Spring, is on the stage is all dirt with peat, and it's very aggressive and very powerful and kind of sensual. There's this red dress that's kind of the wearer of the red dress is kind of have this weird tension element. It seems, I think, a narrative that runs through a lot of these dances. Again, I'm not a dancer, I don't know these things, but a thing that runs through a lot of these dances is elements of power and submission, things of that nature, and a lot of it seems to be coming from a female voice, a feminine perspective on things like power and things like will and things of that sort. So, for example, in this first dance, there's men and women, and they're a group of each, and they're kind of, the women have a sort of more flowiness to them. There's one segment where they're all kind of huddled together, and they're they kind of move like that, sort of in a weird together group, whereas the men are much more separated. They're a bigger presence on the stage, and they've got a lot of big sweeping sort of broad motions, and then the two kind of merge together when the one of the men eventually selects the woman that's going to wear the red dress. I don't know what the plot might be. I've never seen Stravinsky's or any adaptation of Stravinsky's Rites of Spring. It goes from there into Café Muller, which is this dance that takes place in a cafe. Sorry, there's cat hair on my tongue. Takes place in a cafe with all these chairs that sort of a blind woman walks through, and then a man rushes to kind of clear them all out of the way. It's very sporadic and very it's not a formal. This is elegant and stuff. We got the women are running into walls. There's one part where a man in a suit is kind of picking up limbs and adjusting them accordingly and things like that. And eventually this man carries a woman through that, and then he drops her, and it keeps repeating and so on and so forth. And then eventually you don't even need the man to do that anymore. She just falls, and the man just drops her sort of on a cord, which the way I was interpreting it, and this is because I was a philosophy major, was that there's kind of a false needs being told. You're told this is the motion of how you caress somebody or something like that. Because before this man's involvement in telling them how to arrange them in a way that seems compassionate. Before that, they're embracing. So it seems to me like it's a way of saying this is how you're supposed to do things, and eventually you're told it so much that it kind of becomes reified into your consciousness, and you learn you unlearn rather a more sort of static way, and you learn how to be um, in love or something of that sort. It's a really cool performance, but it's very difficult to describe. Um, then there's the third major dance is oh god, what is it? Oh yeah, the contact off. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's Kontakthof. And it's kind of cool the way the camera comes into play more so than it ever has in any of the other dances. In this one, you've got a sort of a line of men and a line of women, and they're kind of coming up and going back and doing sort of solo dances, and there's a sort of fashion runway style, the way they just walk in a straight line down and then run back. And yeah, that one's probably the hardest to describe, but it's kind of like a best in show type. I don't know how to describe it. You'll just have to look it up and figure out for yourself. But the interesting thing about that one compared to the other three is that it doesn't take place on the stage. It takes place in the actual theater that they're all a company. Pina Bausch's company. So it's which was closed during the filming of this movie. So that's kind of cool that we got to see a peek into their sort of normal working spaces. And then the last major dance is I can't remember what it's called, but it translates to Lunar Moon, and it's on a stage with this big rock that occupies probably like a third of the stage, and there's rain sort of happening behind, from obviously from the rafters, and the stage becomes increasingly more wet. People are sliding across it. These guys have these like poles that they're using as oars, and they're sliding their feet, kind of like a reverse moonwalk. And that one's beautiful. Again, I don't know how to describe it, but the rain keeps creeping in, the water keeps creeping in, it becomes an element. People then start kicking the water around and just, waving it around with their hair, and then they've got a level of I don't know how to describe it, depth that starts coming in there. Normally it used to be one woman, and then you kind of had the happenings behind her, so it looked almost kind of like a what's the name? Not Delarue. George Méliès, the classic Voyage de la Lune, Voyage of the Moon, all those old French films, where there's like a background that's kind of in motion, and there's somebody in the foreground. That's kind of what you got from that initial dance. But then people start coming in from side angles, and then people are jumping on the rock, and so there's this big sort of scope to it that starts to develop over time as the water begins to creep in. So you've got the elements moving one way, you've got the dancers moving one way, then you start to get the rain and everything just going all over the place, and it gets crazy towards the end, but it's really cool. So that's my best to describe the dances. Again, I'm not versed in dance, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do appreciate the arts. Obviously, I like film, read comic books, I read normal novels and nonfiction books and things like that. So I wasn't lost, but again, thematically, there's a lot of stuff with power, relations of power that I interpret at least. I don't think that's entirely or entirely out of place. I think I'm correct in assuming that there's a lot just in the way that there's such emphasis on muscles. The men usually have their shirt off, or men are in suits, or there's one brief sort of interlude where a woman's got a sort of a belt to a wire, and she kind of runs and then stops, because the rope is taut, and then it's just running. So that it's power. I think power is a huge theme of this movie. Regarding the Criterion disc itself, so one thing to note is that this was shot in 3D. This is the DVD copy, but the Blu-ray apparently works on 3D TVs, and there's 3D special features included as well, or 3D versions of the special features. So I would say, while I do think this is a cool movie and you should check it out however you can, it is on Netflix, it is on Hulu, it is on physical formats. If you have Blu-ray and if you have 3D, try that, because this movie was made for 3D. As far as special features go, a lot of there is an audio commentary that I didn't get to, but a lot of the stuff that's in here is really fascinating as far as filmmaking is concerned. So a lot of the times Criterion are dubbed film school in a box. This is definitely 3D filmmaking in a box, I would argue. You get a lot of, there's a making of documentary where you're seeing how the craft that went into making the movie. There's maybe a 30-minute video interview with Wim Winders about how he made it, so it elaborates on some of those things that you saw in the making of. There's, what else? Deleted scenes, also which have commentary. Those aren't really as fruitful, but they're still kind of interesting. I think they're warranted in being left out. I think the film flows very well, and those would have broken it up to a point where you might have been lost completely. I think for something as abstract and non-common man as modern dance is concerned, the way that the film is edited works. There's behind the scenes footage, which is usually it's like a 2 to 3 minute clip where they talk. It kind of shows the choreography in place with the stage that has all the tape marks and everything, and then it cuts to like filming it, but you're behind the camera, and then there's the actual scene that gets pretty. So it's pretty cool just to watch it just quickly go through that process. There's a booklet that has some essays. I'm still reading it. Photos, nice photos, stuff like that. Typical Criterion fare, but this kind of helps put you in the vocabulary to be able to understand the movie. I think you can understand it on your own, but you might not know what communication or expression is being what's trying to be communicated or expressed. And this kind of helps tie that down. But yeah, it's a cool movie. It was released 2011. Or the original movie was 2011. This disc, I think, came out earlier this year or late last year. I don't know, but fairly recent release. It's really cool. It's definitely a unique sort of Criterion release. I think the only other dance movie I know of off the top of my head is Martha Graham, Dance on Film. The Red Shoes, but there's not many dance movies in the Criterion collection, so this fills a kind of cool gap, and it's the reason that I'm so interested in the Criterion collection is precisely their mission that they have on the back of all their DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff, is they're exposing people to unique or interesting or important films, and I think this is all of those. I think it's important. It fills a cultural gap in sort of recent memory. The only recent dance movie I know of is New York Export Opus Jazz, which was not a Criterion release. I saw it at a film festival a few years ago, and that was awesome. But it's not something that's very common, and unless you're going to theater companies or dance halls or things of that sort, you probably don't get much exposure to dance. So it's cool. It's just, there's no other way to put it. It's very well done. It's beautifully shot. I'd love to see it in Blu-ray, which I rarely think, I need to see it in Blu-ray. Usually it's like a Terrence Malick movie, but I'm like, I'd love to see that in Blu-ray. Nevertheless, since this review's getting kind of ramblingly long, I would say seek it out. Try it first, just the movie, see if you can get through it. If you like it, then go ahead and find, unless you can, rent the DVD or Blu-ray. But don't blind buy this because it's very out of the ordinary. It's very kind of extraordinary, but nevertheless, give it a shot. Very good movie, very good collection, very good release, very good release from the collection, I should say. Thank you for watching.